welcome everyone to our session today. Thank you for participating in the STEAM conference. So just so you all know, my name is Gabriela Delgado. I am Senior Manager with the San Diego County Office of Education. I oversee expanded learning and community engagement. And we are happy that you're joining us today. As you know, this session is being recorded. So if you lose Wi-Fi or you get booted for whatever reason, don't panic. The session will be recorded, so you'll be able to see it in its entirety if you can't stay with us today. We will ask that you keep yourselves muted unless our presenters ask you to unmute, perhaps during a breakout session. But you, of course, at this point are pretty familiar with Zoom. At this point, you have access to the chat box. We encourage you to use that. You also, some of you, depending on your Zoom, the type of Zoom that you're using, you may have the little hand option available to you if you want to raise your hand, if you want to pose a question to our two presenters. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Debbie and Tara, who are your two presenters today. So welcome aboard and enjoy. Have a good session.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome everybody. It's nice to see you, and we're excited to share this nature journaling program with you today. I'm Tara at Nature Collective, and here with my colleague Debbie.
Hello.
And just quickly, like, how did we even get to this? You know, we are with an organization that offers outdoor science education programming, and in normal times we bring students to the lagoon, which is the San Alejo Lagoon, which is on the coast in Encinitas. But obviously with COVID and all of our field trips shut down, we sort of were scrambling with how, what do we do and how do we continue to provide those opportunities for people to connect to nature when they can't come to the lagoon. So we decided to put together this nature journaling program, because it's really something that you can do anywhere. We designed it for a school program, but we also have an after-school journaling club. And like I said, it's something that it's kind of accessible to everybody, and all you really need is a piece of paper and a pencil. And when you really learn how to observe and look and be aware of your surroundings, like even a blade of grass can be fascinating. And that's kind of what we hope that you take away from this, is like how to get kids just to be excited about their surroundings. And also with all this Zoom and online stuff, we really wanted to do something that would take kids away from the computers and into something that they could touch, feel, be a part of. And it's also a very personal thing, because everybody has their own way of observing, and they'll notice things based on their own memories and their own experiences. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. And yeah, let's see. And Debbie, please jump in, as we go along if there's something I forget, and we'll be co-presenting, but chime in as needed. Again, we introduced ourselves, so and thank you, hosts, for inviting us to present at the STEAMpower. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just quickly, again, we are Nature Collective, and we've been around for over 30 years, providing outdoor opportunities for people to connect to nature. We also do a lot of restoration in North County and beyond. We just want to do a little shout out to John Muir Laws. So he is not related to John Muir, but his parents named him John Muir Laws, and he is sort of the nature journaling guru. Our lessons are based on his material. Debbie's going to put his website link in our chat. And if you're not familiar with him, maybe just a thumbs up if anyone is familiar with John Muir Laws. Have they heard of him and his work? Anybody? No thumbs up. Yeah, so he has just an incredible amount of material on his website. Like I said, our lessons are based on his material. So I really encourage you after the session, if you want to learn more, there's videos, there's lessons, there's workshops, there's opportunities to connect with other people, other teachers. So just a great resource to be aware of. So with that, just want to welcome you to our nature journaling session. Quickly, just our agenda, and this, we will be moving through things quickly. We're going to talk a little bit about why nature journal, like why should we nature journal. Then we're going to go through some foundational skills using techniques like I noticed I wonder it reminds me of, and giving you some journaling tips that will really provide the foundation of any journaling experience that you do with your students or you do on your own. And then you'll also have a chance to nature journal yourself. And then also an opportunity to sort of share what your observations were, and then if you have any questions and closing comments. And of course, this is going to be very quick. We invite you to email us if you have more questions. Perhaps Debbie, you could put our emails in the chat, and also maybe our website where we have some journaling lessons that you can use that we've created for teachers. So just before we jump in, let's just think for a minute, like why keep nature journals? Does anybody wanna, you can put yourself off mute and share, or you're welcome to share in chat. Why nature journal? Why are you know, anything that you wanna share, and or raise your hand, or just, we're a small group, so if you just wanna take yourself off mute and share something, like why keep nature journals? Anybody wanna chime in? We'll give you a minute to think about it. And Debbie, I'll let you keep track of chat.
Carlos goes ahead and shares that nature's relaxing. Norma shares that it keeps us connected with nature.
So like,
I also think, my apologies. I also think that journaling with nature, I think it helps us to be in the present, I guess. And I think that's very important, especially in this moments, in these times. Thank you.
Having a focus.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Norma. Anybody else want to add to what folks have said, or add something that hasn't been mentioned?
Yeah, Hope goes ahead and says in the chat that it helps to get the kids interested and learn to observe and collect data. Carlos also adds that observing plants and animals is fun.
Lots of fun.
Lots of fun.
Okay, with that, great comments, great observations. You're all right, spot on. You've given this some thought, and I think it is something that resonates with all of us. And one of the things is, it allows us to learn. It takes our mind into a different place. So it's a way that we can kind of learn in a different way. It allows us to be present, which we mentioned. It's very easy to, I think we have a tendency to tune out a lot because it's just too much information, and that's kind of a survival skill. But sometimes in things that are familiar to us, we just don't even notice anymore. But when you sort of slow down and be present, you're going to start noticing things that you wouldn't normally notice. Helps us remember, right? We know if we've kept journals, even just writing journals or childhood journals, I've noticed that things that I've written down in my journals, I tend to remember. Those are the stories I remember. And the same when you write something down, this is something that helps us really gain more accurate information. And you might think you remember it, and then you go back in your journal like, oh, actually, it was raining that day, or it was cloudy, or I didn't remember that there were, these certain insects, or all kinds of things that our minds, it's documented. So that's kind of a way to confirm what we saw. It enhances our curiosity, right? And sense of wonder. Again, it takes our brain in a different direction when we actually write things down. So we're gonna, when that happens and you start sort of noticing things more, you are more present, you're gonna ask more questions, right? Because you are present. And builds our visual thinking, right? And recording skills, collecting data, all of that will help us just gather information differently, and again, continue to stimulate our thoughts and encourage us to ask questions and make observations that we wouldn't otherwise make. Anyone have anything to add? Or Debbie, do you want to throw anything else in?
Yeah, I just think that being present, there's a whole different feel to going ahead and actually focusing on one thing rather than all of those other things that go on in our minds constantly. It's kind of a release. And when we go ahead and we write that down, it clears our brain to even take in more information. But that building visual thinking allows us to see nature or whatever we happen to be observing in a different light. We notice the structure, we notice the pattern, we notice that green isn't the same green as this green. So it just really helps us to be a lot more in touch with all those details that make nature and the world around us so fascinating and amazing.
And I think someone also mentioned how it like calms our nervous system, right? Who doesn't need that this day and age? I think we always need that, but we need it even more now. And once you start doing it, I think you'll realize that. And so a huge benefit, social emotional benefit for the students who are all, struggling right now with the situation that we found ourselves in this year. It also can make like common things become novel, right? Something that's very commonplace, we notice all the time, also it feels really different. I've just gone out drilling in my backyard. I'm noticing leaves that like I didn't know that they were certain shapes or how they were different. And that's just, again, taking the time to be aware and to notice our surroundings. Anything else people would like to add to this? All right, great. Thanks for all your feedback. So now we're gonna, I wanna make sure everybody has pencil and paper. It doesn't have to be a nature journal, just something that you can write on. You know, hand lens is kind of fun, but I'm not assuming you have one next to you. A ruler, you know, sometimes helps you take measurements. But what you do need is a nature item. So it could be anything. I have some things on my desk here, like a feather, a pine cone, maybe you have a plant, it could be a shell, it could be a little rock or pebble. I'll give you just like a minute to maybe go grab something. It could be something
from your refrigerator.
Okay. We think alike, Debbie. So maybe give me a thumbs up when you're back with your nature item, because we will be using it in our next activity. Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, seeing some thumbs up, and you know, anything that you can find, a rock, like I said, or even like a little pebble, anything.
A flower or a house plant.
Yeah, maybe if you want, potting soil. If you want to hold up what you had, that's kind of fun, but you don't have to. If you want to show, this is like a little piece of a jade plant. Yeah. Okay. Get started. Okay, so just curious, you know, just saying to the students, like, look closer, make better observations, look closer at that. That's not going to help them, you know, be good observers. There are some really simple foundational techniques that we're going to practice today that helps everybody become better observers. So we're going to use this technique of I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. And when we're saying I notice, you are, you know, making an observation that you can, you know, notice in the moment. So it's not opinions like I notice this is really pretty or something. That's my opinion, right? I notice an insect ate that. That would be something that, you know, you're making that assumption, but unless you see the insect in the process of eating it, then that wouldn't be an observation. And you want to use your different senses as well, right? You might use your sense of smell, obviously your sense of touch, you're using your sight, taste, if it's from your refrigerator, I'm guessing you could use your sense of taste. And so using all of your senses and when you're making your observations. And what's really fun about this is when we do it with the kids, we often use it as an icebreaker, because making an observation is something everybody can do. They can succeed right off the bat and they get really excited about it. So, you know, I notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leaves on this little stem. I notice that the tips are red. I notice when I touch it, it feels kind of spongy. I don't really notice a smell. So those are just basic observations that you can make. So I want everyone to take themselves off mute and together, nice and loud. And when we say things out loud, it changes how we think as well. So it's really important. It seems kind of weird, but like saying it out loud is actually an important aspect of this activity. So let's take ourselves off mute and make observations about the object that you chose to observe. So on the count of 3, and then when I put my hands up, you can all stop, okay? 1, 2, 3. I noticed that
there's different
paint.
I noticed that this has there's tan, there's yellow brown, there's a very dark brown. I noticed that the ends are not the same. One end is relatively flat
I
circular.
noticed my knees out of water.
3, 2, 1. Right. Great. I hope you made some interesting noticings and observations. And next we're going to move on to the I wonder. And, you know, asking questions is something that kids do all the time, right? Who's been around a 2-year-old? What's this? What's that? Why this? Why that? Right? That's like a normal thing. Like kids just ask questions, like so many questions. But also at some point, they maybe get nervous about asking questions, or they think like it might be a bad question. It's a wrong question. What we really want to encourage is just ask wonderings, right? A wondering is a question, but there's no wrong question. So what do you wonder about your object? You know, I wonder if this will ever grow roots. I wonder what plant this came from because someone gave this to me. I wonder if how long it will survive, not being attached to its plant. All kinds of questions like that, right? So let's do some wonderings together on the count of 3 again. 1, 2, 3. I wonder if this
Why
survive.
came from. I wonder if it was cut.
I wonder
growth here.
how old.
I wonder what made these lines in wood. I wonder why
I
it's
wonder if
different colors.
it's really
I wonder if this was part of the branch. I wonder what the leaf would have looked like on this plant. I wonder.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Some good wonderings. We probably don't have people time for share. Okay, we'll do that later. Okay, and then the next one is it reminds me of, right? So that's, again, students or anyone making connections with maybe prior knowledge, something that they, again, a different way for them to connect to it. So they connect by making their observations, they're asking questions, but also then they start just sort of, what does it remind you of? And so it could be anything. It could be, this reminds me of a flower bloom, the way it's opening. It could remind you of, visiting your aunt who had a lot of, shells in their yard or whatever, anything. It can remind you of, if it's the shape of, a surfboard or if you're a surfer, anything that it reminds you of doesn't have to, it can be anything. So another way that kids might think of things, and you look at this picture of the wings of a butterfly, it might remind folks of an airplane. So let's do that activity one more time. All right, 3, 2, 1. This reminds me of flowers,
pathways, trails, or highway system. The bottom part almost reminds me of like the jaw of an animal.
Very beautiful.
Eyes right here, maybe it's a shark or a whale. It reminds me of colors, reminds me of wood.
Reminds me of the cake I ate.
Great. And again, saying this out loud is a way for us to sort of like keep pushing ourselves, right? If you say it in your mind, sometimes you just sort of like maybe your mind, and you could be distracted, right? Saying things out loud keeps you focused on the item that you're looking at, sort of forces you to be present with what you're observing. Otherwise, your mind will kind of just go other places. It keeps you kind of accountable, right? And so we encourage that. And even, you might feel a little odd walking around nature saying things out loud, but I have this so ingrained in my head, it's actually changed the way I interact with nature. So it's fun. Next, so that's foundational. Anytime you're doing any nature journey, you want to kind of just, I notice what it reminds me of, just sort of go there, and that will just kind of take your mind in different directions and help you really be present and make observations that you wouldn't make otherwise. Then we also want to look at using words, pictures, and numbers, right? So we think pictures, yeah, you're drawing, you're doing nature journaling. Let's start with words. Some people who maybe aren't comfortable nature journaling, they're going to be more comfortable using words. It kind of varies on what, and we want to always reinforce this is not about making artistic pictures. It's about capturing the information that you're making observations about. So words, you can have fun with it too. You can do bubble words. You can, you can see they write in circles. You can write sideways. You can make it bold. You can make it, shade it. You can do labels. There's all kinds of ways that you can use words and be a little bit of, playful with it, because that makes it fun. And that's something that is also very accessible to everybody. You can do bullet points. So words, and then pictures, right? Pictures, you think nature journaling, and sometimes, people really get caught up on the perfect picture, and spending too much time. It's not about that. It's about being accurate. So sort of doing outlines of the shape of something, but then you enhance it with the words. And oftentimes when you are observing nature, there isn't a lot of time either, right? So if you get the general shape down and then add some words to it, you don't even really have to do colors. That's something that you can do later. But again, always de-emphasizing the pretty picture. We always encourage, when we give feedback, we talk about, what they did. Oh, I noticed that you use words and you use pictures, not about, oh, that's such a pretty picture, because that can be really discouraging and intimidating for students if they think they have to be. You want them to capture information. That way, numbers is another way of sort of adding to the details of being accurate, right? You can do little graphs, you can do little tallies. You can, if it's too many, you could just, more than 30 at least, if there's tiny little hairs on a plant you're looking at, or a flock of birds that you can't count them all, but you can actually do an estimate of the numbers. You can also, using numbers is great with using your ruler, right? What is the length? Are they all the same length? Are they all different? I wonder why. That will lead to more questions, right? The more of these techniques that you use, the more questions that you're going to ask, and the more curious you're going to be about your surroundings. Are all the leaves the same length? Are they all different lengths? You can do little experiments with that. Anything you want to jump in, Debbie, add?
No, just that, when we're doing these with students, we went through that. I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of very, very quickly, they would want to spend more time in regard to that observation process. And then those ends up serving as prompts for entries on a journal page like this. Just thinking about how can I turn my observations into words, pictures, and numbers. So some students will go ahead and feel more comfortable starting with a picture and then adding those details of words and numbers after, but there's no right or wrong in regards to a journal page because they're all unique to that person. It's that person's creating the memories on that page for themselves to be able to share with others.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too. With I Know, So I Wonder, it reminds me, that can be a 20, 25-minute activity. It's so much fun. All the kids, you can put them in a little circle and then they share what they're noticing. So if they all pick up something that's similar to, like say they pick up a little leaf off the ground from the same tree, then, they're making the observations and they're kind of like, oh, mine has that, mine doesn't. It generates a lot of conversation and discussion. So it can be a lot of fun. And like I said, a great icebreaker. Just sometimes people don't know how to interact in nature. So it gives them those tools and to be successful, right? When we bring kids sometimes out to nature, they haven't spent a lot of time, so it's uncomfortable for them, but right away, and then they start noticing, that's the beginning, and then they start noticing more when they go, hiking around or even just moving around the schoolyard or wherever they happen to be. They'll notice things that nature is all around us. Okay, so just quickly get your piece of paper and be ready. And some of the things, again, more journaling tips that we want to include is metadata is just a standard sort of journaling. You want to put that on, what day is it? Where are you? What's the weather like? What time is it? It's also kind of breaking the ice on that piece of paper, because looking at a blank piece of paper can be a little bit intimidating. Like, where do I get started? But once you have like just the date and the time, and then you're kind of like, okay, I've already entered something on my piece of paper. And and that's obviously not too difficult to do. And then as we talked about, you want to get started with it. I Know, So I Wonder reminds me of saying that out loud. In a minute, you have a chance to do this on your own. We talked about de-emphasizing it, that it's a pretty picture, right? That has nothing to do with nature journaling. You can improve your skills with practice, but that's not the goal in getting started. The goal in getting started is using these techniques that make you comfortable and allow you. I personally have very little journaling skills, but it's fun to practice and improve upon them, and it's again, has all kinds of benefits. Use word, pictures, and numbers. We talked about that, just kind of like really reinforcing these techniques, because again, this is something that you would always want to use every time you sit down to nature journal. And then sometimes when like I'm done, the scribble scrabble and then being done, but just sort of de-emphasize that and just have them sit and maybe do nothing. Say, just why don't you look at it for another minute and don't do anything, and then enter something. So the slowing down, right? This isn't a race to finish. This is an experience that you want, and you want everybody to have their personal experience, and that's unique to them. And again, nothing right or wrong. Making an observation is your observation, right? But there are certain things that everybody can succeed there. Everybody can succeed in. And it's not as much pressure if you're doing after school and stuff, but this is so well aligned too with the next generation science standards, right? If you're looking at the cross-cutting concepts of patterns, structure and function, cause and effect, it's kind of fun to bring those in. NGSS or not, it's fun to start looking at patterns, right? You'll start noticing things. Oh, all the leaves on the bottom are smaller. All the tips are red. Oh, only the tips on the top are red. And then that leads to questions. And then just again, making these observations. Ooh, we gotta get started. Okay, with that, you get to practice. We're gonna give you 10 minutes to do some nature journaling on your own. Or should we just say 8 minutes? Maybe, Debbie, we're running a little bit late. Sorry. So you can, go, if you're on, go and spend some time with the object that you just collected, that we did that little activity with, but now enter it in your journal. So set up your metadata, say I notice I want to arouse again, add that to your journal or your piece of paper, and then we'll come back and we'll have a chance to kind of discuss and share our notices with each other.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? We'll come back at 1:35. Is that 1:36, Debbie?
1:36.
1:36. We'll see you back. All right, happy journaling. Any questions?
Do we leave and then we come back to the meeting again?
Just come back to this.
Yeah, you could just go ahead and stay. If you're going to go ahead and journal like the item that you selected, that you've done the I notice, I wonder, you could just go ahead and sit here. If you want to turn, if it's more comfortable, turn your video off, but you don't have to go anywhere if you don't want to. If you want to do something different, then yeah, still 1:36. Come back.
Wow, that music really, whoever put that on, Gabriela, it was lovely, because I got really carried away. I hope you did too. Sorry to cut in. I should have given you some notice or something. I know I was totally immersed.
That's my journaling playlist when I'm with students. I just play that in the background for them.
But yeah, talk about being able to, get away from all of our thoughts and our screen times and everything, and be in the present and be focused on. I was observing a fairly common, something I have on my desk all the time, and notice all kinds of interesting things. But with that, I think we want to take some time to share our observations. Debbie, do you suggest we just stay in one group? Should we? Yeah, in the interest of time, and also we are a small group. So if anybody wants to,
We've got people put up their journal pages.
Their journals. I was doing a feather. Thank you for sharing. I got it. Looks like a lime, Carlos. Yeah. And something very familiar, right? That I'm guessing you noticed some things or had some questions about after you spent some time with your, and it looks like I don't know if it was already cut, but you changed the perspective a little bit by that's something that we didn't go into, but changing perspectives when you think you're running out of things to notice, changing the perspective can really add to new observations and new noticings, right? Does anybody want to share their experience, their journal entry with us, with each other?
I'll share.
Thanks. Norma, was that you, Norma?
No,
Yes.
this is Hope.
Oh,
Norma's
ahead.
on too. Norma, you go. Sorry.
Well, you can both go, just, yeah. One at a time, though.
Let's go ahead and
I'm
have
still
Hope.
on
Go
mute,
ahead.
so I'll go.
Okay, Hope.
I was doing my bamboo plant, also known as Planty McGee. That's his name. At first, when I started, it was very basic, like, okay, it's green. It has 3 different stems or stalks to it, and then I started like measuring it. But then as I go further, it made me wonder more about it and notice more things about it. And as the time went on, I have like a full page worth of things that I wrote about the plant right now and drew a diagram. It's very disorganized, but there's so much information and questions and wondering on it. I have really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hope, for sharing. That's fun. You see, not only are you making great observations, you're maybe feeling better, maybe your blood pressure is dropping a little bit. Music was definitely helpful. We haven't used that. I like that.
Well, and sometimes with organization of pages, like you can just go ahead and put boxes to go ahead and allow for separation. So you don't want kids to go ahead, even as adults, struggle with, oh my gosh, do I have to have some kind of organization to this page? You really want to go ahead and go with it, but then you can organize afterwards, just the simple use of boxes or circles. So I I think Norma wanted to share next.
So my experiencing, it's that it was very relaxing. Like you were mentioning, the music, I think it kind of helped even more to really engage and focus. I started drawing. That's the first thing that I started doing. And like, I think it was Miss Hope. I think that like her, I at first it was just kind of like normal, like a normal drawing, but then I started noticing more in my drawing, like on the plan, because I wanted to draw like the exact details. And then after that, of course, I started writing, and I wrote a lot of notes, I think. Thank you.
Great. Anything that surprised you about your object?
I think on mine is that what it surprised of my object is that it grew in the backyard of my house, of my mom's house, and it feels like it was very strong, like because I try to pull out, not pull it out, like get like the leaf, and it feels like it was very really strong. So the funny part of this is that it's a plant that we used, my parents used when they hurt themselves, like in like they get a scratch or something. They would use it like a medicine, something like a medical purpose.
Yeah.
And that's why I was very surprised.
So yeah, interesting.
That was a nice remind you of for that plant.
Yes.
We probably have time for a couple more people to share their observations. Hey, Carlos. Yep, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, I did a piece of lime. I ate the other half like earlier for breakfast. So the first thing I did, well, I wrote the dates and the time. Actually, it's an old receipt. And, oh yeah, that worked perfectly. So what I noticed is, yeah, I cut it around 2 hours ago. So I noticed that the color is consistent, like it hasn't changed colors like an apple. Like when you cut an apple or take a bite, changes color. So not this. It's probably because of the, I don't know, maybe the acid. I don't know. Notice that it doesn't have seeds. It's a seedless lemon, so I wonder why it doesn't have seeds. Okay, I wonder how much juice it has if I squeeze the whole thing. How much juice I can get out of? It's about 2 inches in width.
You used your ruler and yeah, numbers.
Yeah, I was going for numbers. I was wondering how much it weighed because it feels a little bit heavy for being a lime.
I wonder if it has a lot of juice, if it's a little heavy, right?
It's
correlation to that.
Yeah, it's probably because it has a lot of liquid, maybe.
You know, I think almost experiments like weighing limes and then squeezing them. You know, you think of where all these things can go. That's math, right?
Yeah, that's I've been noticing. And something that really caught my attention that I hadn't noticed is that the skin, I don't know if you can see it, it has like a lot of little dimples and pores. So it looks a lot like human skin. When you take it like a hot shower, like the skin, the pores open. So the lemon skin, it resembles a lot like just natural human skin.
Except it's green.
Yeah, it's green.
That's interesting. You're noticing a pattern there that's similar to, and then, you know, when that's the whole thing with the cross-cutting concepts, that there's all these, you know, things in living organisms that, or even non, that, you know, share these sorts of, you make these observations that it reminds you of human skin. Well, then I wonder why. Is there some benefit to that structure and function of that surface that allows whatever to happen, you know? Lots of great observations, everybody. Thank you for sharing. Anything else?
No, I just did a few drawings, just cross section and just little drawings.
I like how you change the perspective, and that's something that, like I said, I forgot to mention, but that's really important. You can move away, you can move closer, you can cut it, you can change the angle. I mean, there's so many things, and you're like, oh, I didn't notice that before. Maybe we can squeeze in one more share if anybody wants to jump in. No pressure. All right, should we share go back to the, thank you all. That was, it's always fun, right? And there's always these surprises that we have, and of familiar objects that become feeling very novel, right? And you'll never forget that, right? Once you put that on paper and talked about it, right? The discussion part is very important, because that's another continuing a way to learn and have other people provide feedback or have, you know, similar different experiences that they've had during their own observations.
Well, and I think it
Yep.
allows them to be curious about that item too, because I was wondering in regards to sections, you know, do they all have the same number of sections in them? And you cut that open. So.
Okay, we
Covered that.
do you want to introduce this, Debbie?
So anyway, on our website, you'll find that we have nature journaling lessons, and like Tara had mentioned before, John Muir's Laws, we're actually taking it from one of his books called How to Teach Nature Journaling. And you can go ahead and download that from his site for free. So you can have a PDF copy with lots of different activities in it. Our introductory lessons just are that basic foundation that we introduced to you. We are doing these with classes, so we have kids go ahead and design their own science notebook cover, but then we go through those fundamentals of I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, to go ahead and boost their observation skills. And then we go ahead and look at the techniques for nature journaling to make that nature page as rich as it can be. So the skill-based lessons that follow, one is comparison. In that particular lesson, they actually compare two similar nature items, like two leaves, and they go ahead and look at them back and forth and find out some other information and data, entering the same I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, using words, pictures, and numbers for all of these. Zoom in, zoom out. You go ahead and look at something from more of a far away or a life-size presence, and then you can zoom in and look a lot closer. What are the other details that you notice that you look closer at that object from? The sound map, basically you sit yourself and you just listen to the sounds around you and record them with whatever little symbols or words that help you remember what that sound is and where you heard it. Was it behind you? Was it close to you? Was it in front? Was it a bird? Was it a car driving by? Just going ahead and using that more sense of sound to be aware of your nature around you. The string safari, they actually just take a little string, about 4 to 5. You could even use a hula hoop if you're in an after school program, lay it on the ground and just observe what is the nature that you find within the parameters of that particular structure in that little ecosystem that you've surrounded. And the last one, an environmental impact mapping, just going ahead and observing the nature that you pass through, but also looking at both positive and negative impacts of humans on the environment, and then coming back and talking about those problems and looking at solutions. So those are all on our website. And they have not only a teacher guide, but they also have a slide presentation and also a formatting for a nature journal page, but that isn't necessary to use. Certainly just kind of having that free form allows kids to be creative and not like in some type of structure, but there just in case it's needed for kids to get started. And then these are just some examples of some student pages that we've had in the different activities that we've done in classrooms. That's their little nature journal notebook cover. An example of their I notice, I wonder with their jade plants, the string safari where they've laid it on the grass, and those are the little items that they found inside, and then comparing the two different leaves. So in closing, this is where on our website, those are all listed.
I'll just go there quickly.
Sure. So it gives a little bit of background, and then each of the lessons will go ahead, identify by title, but then also links to those teacher guides and presentation formats.
Yeah, so each one you'll see there's a teacher guided presentation. Some of them have, a couple of them have a video. I think 3 of them have a video, and it'll just kind of help you get started. You know, they're the kind of great intro lessons, and everything's kind of laid out for you. So those are materials that are free for you to use. You can get them off our website, and then that resource in combination with John Muir Laws is, a lot, plenty to help to get you started.
Yeah, and I see Vanessa, that link is, I wonder that is in here. I think it's the next lesson after this one. So there are links to presentations in regards to starting with.
It is, yeah.
Right. So hopefully this is helpful and gives you some resources to do with the students that you are working with, as well as you've had an experience. So possibly maybe you'll go out and do some nature journaling on your own as well. I do believe that Gabriella ended up putting a link in for a survey. If you could go ahead and make sure you take that before the end of the day, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Tina, for putting the link in the chat box. If you haven't seen it, again, the link to the survey is available now. You could click on that right now before you go to your next session, or complete it by 3 p.m. today. That does conclude our time for this workshop, so please join me in thanking both Tara and Debbie for their time today. Thanks, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this session and that you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks again, Tara and Debbie. Take care.